Y es que te quiero escapar.
You knew this would happen?
Everything changed.
Este es William Mann de Missouri.
I got a job at Tower Records because that's the only place I could get a job with my haircut. That is the truth.
The largest record store in the universe is Tower Records.
Tower Records had everything. They were like friends.
If you came into town, you went to Tower Records.
Tower was the center of it all.
San Francisco,
New York,
Japan,
London.
Revenues of $1 billion.
Around the time I learned about Russ Solomon, I didn't know anything about the Tower Records founder and how he got into the record business. And as soon as I heard about his father's pharmacy and selling used 78s out of that store, it struck me as a really interesting beginning to an obviously very long history. So that was sort of the initial moment, and the more research I did, I just found really engaging characters and a really good story.
The whole thing became a phenomenon.
Tower was like the place to work at.
we had no dress code.
No, Russ was very on board with the idea of the documentary. The first thing he said to us, he said, "You're crazy. I don't know anyone who's going to want to see that story, but let's give it a shot," which is a very Russ way of dealing with an idea. He may not necessarily understand it, but if there's something intriguing about it, he'll come on board. And I think enough people had told him over the years that there was a story there. I just don't. He's pretty humble, so he's not one to think that on his own. Yeah, he's never one to pass up a good idea. My godmother had worked at Tower when she was a kid, so I'd remembered hearing stories about her time there. But really, it was more because of my own personal time shopping in the store. I spent a lot of time and a lot of money at Tower as a kid. You may not have much money, but you sure got a bunch of time to kill. And Tower was one of those places where they didn't really care if you bought something. You could just sort of hang out. And so I spent a lot of time in Tower Records, bought a lot of important albums in my life at Tower.
A perfect storm of events was developing.
There was no need for kids to even go in a record store to get their music.
Well, Kickstarter definitely helped keep the film alive. I mean, we're not 100% funded by Kickstarter, so we needed to raise a lot more additional funds. But it definitely kept the film going during the lean years. And in the 7 years that it took to make the movie, a lot of things changed. The technology changed. iTunes really became incredibly popular, as well as streaming, and that affects the music industry as it does the film industry, and specifically the documentary world. So, the irony of having to embrace the digital technology is not lost on us at all. But we pulled a lot of pages from the Russ Solomon playbook, and one of the things that we learned from him, and unfortunately was a lesson he learned after he was forced to close all the stores, was that you got to embrace the new technology. You got to find a way to be able to get your stuff out. And so for us, that's the way the world works now. And more than anything, I'm just happy that anyone gets to see the film. That's really the most important thing. And whether they get it on their computer or get it on DVD, either one works for me.
It's the end of an icon.
He fought, but he basically had to cut the heart out of the company.
We made a very concerted effort to make sure that we approached artists that we felt could contribute to the story. A lot of times music documentaries tend to have all the famous people talking in the first 3 minutes saying why the subject is important, and then you never really see them again because they're not really part of the story. So I wanted to approach people that could had specific relationships to Tower Records, or at least could wax philosophically in a way that would be impactful. And so Elton John obviously has a deep connection with Tower Records, a deep love for it, so I knew I wanted to include him. Dave Grohl was a former employee, so that was incredibly helpful because I could get him talking about the employee side of things as well as the sort of artist side of things, you know, coming in and seeing their albums being sold. And Bruce is one of those guys where, you know, whenever he's talking about music, it's just captivating and engaging. And he ended up bringing us more than we needed. I mean, it's just the fact that he was talking about being a touring musician and coming into Los Angeles and seeing Tower Records, that was a great perspective that we hadn't necessarily thought of. So, you know, it's good. Luckily, you know, they were all very willing participants. It was really just more about working out the schedules and months of emails back and forth. Actually, a really good question. You know, I would say they both have their pros and they both have their cons, both their advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, in this day and age, it's pretty amazing to be able to have pretty much all of recorded music in the history of the world accessible at your fingertips. That's an impressive thing, and I've definitely benefited from it, and there are certain aspects of it that I really enjoy. You know, the ability to get a new record right as soon as it comes out, you know, the morning of, without even leaving your bed. That's you can't argue with that convenience. But at the same time, there is something to be said about the social experience of going to a record store and listening to the music being played and flipping through the bins and talking with the clerks and the buyers there and you know, finding out, you know, when new stuff is coming out and sort of the, you know, the habitual nature of it. And you know, honestly, I think the main thing that's lost is, you know, the personal connection. And what I mean by that is really the personal connection that you have with the music, not necessarily the personal connection with another human being. You know, I remember where I was when I bought the albums that meant a lot to me, but I don't remember where I was when I downloaded the albums that I really loved. That's a big difference.
Be able to go into a store where there was people that knew music, it's just a missing part of our society now.
Yeah, I don't really buy CDs anymore. I don't. I have a CD player in my car, but that's pretty much else. I don't even have one on my laptop anymore. So vinyl is really how I purchase a majority of music now, and it helps when there's a download code involved. So ironically, I didn't start streaming music until I started making this movie, which I thought was actually kind of weird. But again, there is an element to it that is nice. It is you know, it's my own personal listening station. But if it's something that I really love, I'll still go and support the artist and go buy the record proper, because I am, you know, a collector nut.
We just happen to be at that right place at the right time. You want to call that luck? Then call it luck.
What would you call it?
Luck.
Yeah, it would definitely be fun to be able to work sort of more in a sort of straightforward narrative film. Yeah, I mean, if the right project came along, I would definitely try to tackle it. There's elements of the documentary world that I really enjoy, that are unique to documentaries, and I think I got to get maybe a few more of those under my, under my belt before I'm able to sort of tackle a narrative piece. But it definitely was, you know, not out of the cards. It could come down the line, and you know, it's really just sort of a wait and see kind of thing.
Awesome.